Lake Park Audubon Schools welcomes you to the meeting of the Lake Park Board of Education. While this is a meeting of the board to conduct the business of the school district, the board is not statutorily compelled to hear comments. We also desire to provide an opportunity to hear from members of the public, including staff and students, on matters of interest. This portion of the agenda will be limited to a total of not more than 30 minutes unless otherwise determined by the board. Individual speakers are asked to limit their comments to not more than 3 minutes. The board requests that all comments be in keeping with and contribute to an atmosphere of civil, courteous, thoughtful, and respectful public discourse. Board members and administration will not respond to comments at the meeting. Appropriate responses will be provided at a later time, or comments may lead to future board agenda items. Thank you for attending. Do we have anyone with any comments? Okay. Moving on, policy committee report 3.1. Mark and Marge.
It's in the agenda for tonight.
Talk about policy 9, and Dr. Godfrey put his name on that policy, and then
Title 9.
yeah, Title 9, and then we talked about authorization post, adding non-licensed staff and licensed staff, which is a change. Those are the two main items we talked about.
Okay. Any questions for Mark or Marge? Negotiations committee. Dave, do you want to take it or do you want me to?
We just met today, made our offer for the final contract, so it needs to be merged by the lawyer, but we think we've reached an agreement. So is there anything else to say about that?
Well, it's one of our items for closed session tonight to present the board with a full contract offer. And so, yeah, Christy Hastings has been working to update items that were tentatively agreed upon last June, and then we kind of stopped negotiating for a while and reopened it after Dr. Godfrey was here for a bit, and so then kind of merging those two contracts together. And both the EA has reviewed that, and we have reviewed that as well. Any questions?
Are we talking about both of them in closed session tonight, or this one?
Both.
Okay.
Both what, Marge?
Both contracts?
We're talking about we're doing a superintendent eval and we're doing the EA contract.
Okay.
Enclosed. Any other questions? Okay, moving on, 4.1, elementary principal, Mr. Barr.
Just an opportunity. We've had the building referendum vote since I've got to present last. So just a thank you to the community. We talked to our students about everyone in the Lake Park Audubon School District. If your property owner pays money, we said every day, or every month to their property taxes for them to go to school. The responsibility it is that they're in school, but how much we care about them and how important that is, and just that community voted to spend even more of their hard-earned money to make sure that they have a school that's adequate for them. So we just wanted to make sure our students appreciate it, but the adults as well. And just want to make sure we're good stewards of that, but just an exciting time for Lake Park Audubon to make sure we have a building that reflects all the great things happening inside it, and it's a point of pride for our community because we have great communities. We want to have great schools as well. So just a general thank you to the community for that and trusting us in that, and then to make sure that we put that towards good and continue to have great products and amazing students coming out of that building for many years to come. We have after-school care options, as you can see up there. We have targeted services, which is after-school tutoring with a teacher, usually grouped by grade level. Some are combined if we have smaller. We have 94 students enrolled in that, and many teachers across the school helping with that. And then Raider Care, where Kelly Jensen is the coordinator of that this year. We have 70 students, and that's after school, heavily subsidized, about $2.50 an hour for students. Basically a daycare, not as much tutoring in that, but that students can go to until 6 o'clock. And I know as we have families new to our communities that work outside of Lake Park and Audubon, that's a huge asset to them and something they really appreciate. So shout out to Kelly and all the staff that work that, and just so you can kind of know the number of students and families utilizing that. Fall conferences, it was great to be back in person. There was a virtual option. Didn't require staff to tell me, but just kind of inquired. I would say we had less than 5 families choose a virtual option. We had 98%. So we have 433 conferences. Some have double conferences with kids when you count preschool. 424 showed up. So, I mean, if you look into area schools, nobody gets 98% attendance. I mean, that's a shout out to our communities, our families, and our teachers for reaching out as well. Just that community partnership, and whether that's the building referendum or grandparents' day or conferences, we're just so fortunate to be part of communities that partner with us, and our kids being part of families that take an active role in their education, and that's reflected when you hit numbers like that. And we're still working on rescheduling with those 9 that didn't have a conference, so we won't give up at 98% either. Shout out to our elementary PAS committee. I see Nicole Perman, who helps chairs it, and some Clouders on the committee. But just shout out, this year we presented to the high school. That was more of an open, just kind of Q&A partnership. We went to Barnesville Elementary, who's looking to be a PBS school, which is positive behavior interventions and supports. But it's having common among all staff what you expect of students, rewarding and acknowledging that to students, but having high expectations for them as well. We're an ambassador school. The last time they released numbers, there's only 15 of those in the state of Minnesota. I haven't heard what the new numbers are, but that allows us to go out to college prep programs. So those coming up through the teaching ranks to learn how to support students in that setting. So what a great thing from Lake Park Audubon, and we usually present at the tri-colleges. Most years when I do interviews with teaching candidates, a couple will mention I applied to Lake Park Audubon because I saw them at my MSUM class. I saw them at my Concordia class. Our committee presented them to Bemidji already this year. So just a great word to get out there. You can see our members on there. Spotlight Lori Thompson as well as a community member. And just in a regional, I think we went to Holly Elementary. I don't know if McCarty East would like us to come. You know, Hinterdall. It's just a point of pride and something we're able to give back to other schools as we steal ideas from them too. And then it's ongoing every month, but December every year. But just to kind of reinforce, shared it on the news for school news this week too. But just that we have grade level meetings every month where our licensed staff get together and student focused. So we look at individual students. It doesn't matter if they're a top end student. They have to honor their knowledge and make sure they're growing. A middle student that needs that practice, or a low student that we're doing interventions. And we want to make sure what we're tailoring to help support them is working over time. So every single student in our school gets at least a quick kind of conversation with the whole grade level, our RTI coordinator, school psychologist, special education, myself, and other relevant staff. And just an attempt to make sure we're eliminating those cracks that can be in school and different kids can fall on, whether it's at all levels. So that's something we do every month, very individualized. And then this year we've looked at more system practices too, a little broader, and just the small groups that we're teaching in our classrooms. And then we did a social emotional benchmark. So students that have kind of outgoing behaviors, but also those internalized ones like depression or anxiety. We had just a rating scale on that, first time doing it. So it's probably going to have some skewed results first time you do anything, but we'll look at some of those students that identified as needing supports. And as a school, are we meeting those needs? Can we do a better job? Or are there needs that we aren't meeting that we need to respond to? And then also support our teachers in that as well. And then maintenance, we're just updating some schedules, make sure we have all corners of our building on our schedules and things like snow removal on that too. So you'll probably hear some tweaks ongoing there. We're fully staffed. Welcome to Jennifer Ramanschwag. She's not here to tell me I'm wrong. But I'll be meeting with Jennifer. I'll make sure I get that last name right. But excited to welcome her as an evening custodian and then a route driver. She'll be a substitute for us for all the activity drivers for the rest of this year. And then look, we could build onto that in the future years. Shout out to Peg and Wally who are here, letting her do ride-alongs in the bus. Adam Simon also did a ride along, and then Jim Willette's taken a huge lead in helping train her in on the maintenance side of things too. So really appreciate their support in our transition here. And then we'll just re-energize our request system there too. Enrollment is what it has been, and then you're going to see some upcoming dates coming up.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Barr? Hooray to full staff.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to 4.2 business manager. Do we have Lisa or Amanda online?
Lisa here. Can you hear me?
There?
Was that a yes? Okay, this is the audit summary. Let me pull up let's see.
Oh, I see her.
Yep. Do you hear me?
She's talking. We can't hear you, Lisa.
She's not muted. Make sure I'm not muted.
Is that speaker?
Lisa, I did hear you before.
Lisa, thumbs up if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
I can, Lisa, but I don't think that's going to help much.
That's strange, isn't it? Let's see here. Hello, can you guys hear me now? Nothing. Can you hear me now?
So I don't know.
Well, this should be the one that works. Can you hear me? Dang it.
Lisa, we still can't hear you.
Sorry.
But the board meeting here,
Brian, you want to see if they can hear you?
can you hear me, Lisa?
Lisa,
can
do you
hear you.
want to
Yeah, I don't think they
log
can
off and
hear
try and
any of
log
us.
back in?
Sure.
Should we move on to art real quick?
Yes.
We'll go back. Secondary principal, Mr. Meyer.
My report did go through cyberspace, so I just emailed what you reported here. We're just trying to go back to normalcy, so we had our band, we had a choir concert on the 26th of October. Great performance. Our students were able to, because Jordan just, like, you're having so much time off, just to get used to getting in front of people again, be able to enunciate, so awesome job on our students to get back to performing. We had our end of the midterm on the November 5th. So if you click on the link, you can see the high number of our students that are either on the A or B honor roll. We had our Veterans Day program on Wednesday, November 10th. We had a great turnout. We had a ton of veterans there, and they said it was the best performance they've ever seen. Really appreciated. Big shout out to Ms. Jordan and Mr. Eklund. Our band and choir sounded excellent. And a big thank you to Dr. Godfrey, our guest speaker. Thank you for your service and the outstanding message to our student body. Parent-teacher conferences were on November 9th and the 11th. We did not have 90%, which very good, but we were steady the whole time. Great turnout. We did offer what the parent requested, and very few requested that way. They wanted to go back to what it used to be. We had our ASVAB test on Wednesday, November 17th. We had 30 students partake in our ASVAB test. They're going to come back next month and give our students their results. Our junior high knowledge bowl just wrapped up their season. They had 3 different contests. Thank you to Ms. Bickmark for her outstanding work with our students. And then they had Are You Smarter Than a 7th or 8th grader? So we had staff take on the junior high. So it's kind of fun one good way for our students, like, see where maybe not as smart as they think they are, or they're smarter than.
I will clarify, I am not smarter than a 7th grader.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little fun little activity just like that we had. And, our National Honor Society has been knocking it out of the park. So we had a blood drive last week. They set a all-time record with 50 units being produced. And then they also had Stuff the Turkey. Our seniors edged up the 7th graders in the last minutes. It was just kind of a fun way for our students to be able to give back to the community in that regards. And then we had our band concert last Thursday with a great turnout with Mr. Eklund. He did a great job with our band students. Upcoming events, we have senior high knowledge bowl. Now that junior high knowledge bowl is complete, starting up practices. Our band and choir are going to start going to more outside events. So they're going to West Acres on December 2nd. The end of our trimester will be on December 3rd. Our holiday choir concert will be on December 6th. And then please come and support our fall musical students on Annie on Saturday, December 11th at 7 p.m. They've been working hard all year long, putting in a lot of time and effort after school. We're going to get ready for that last practice before the big performance. Our senior high knowledge bowl will compete for the first time at Concordia on December 16th. And a couple updates. We are on the second growth mindset, which is passion first. Our students and staff have been working hard to get to see the lessons and supports, and right now the positive results that are coming from our students and staff working together to be able to support each other. And then, like Craig mentioned, like our multi-tier system, our staff, we're going to have another staff meeting tomorrow morning just to provide. We have some students that have been distance learning for almost a year. There's some students that have been doing online, some have been homeschooled. For them to come back to school, that's been a challenge. Just how we're trying to find ways to provide them education-wise, how can we support them social-emotional learning, and then behavior-wise. With our PBS team, we've got some different ideas that we're offering our students, and we're just kind of looking forward to the challenges that go with our multi-tier system. Otherwise, our enrollment is up 4 from last month. The numbers at the bottom.
Questions for Mr. Meyer? I maybe missed it. Did you say how many we still have out that are out doing homeschool or distance learning?
Right now, we're either all in or all out.
All in or all out?
I'm just saying, like last year, we had some kids that were essentially since the following March.
Yep.
They were like not in school for almost a year and a half. For them to come back to school, so it's not as easy as just finding those supports is very important.
Any other questions? Okay, do we have Lisa yet?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Still can't hear you, Lisa.
I don't know what to do here.
That's the right one. Yeah, those are working. Hit these 3 dots.
Can you hear me now? How about now?
You wanna move on while we're working on it?
Well, next up would be Superintendent. Do you want us to skip over you?
Yeah, for now.
Technology Director is John here. Oh, maybe we have her now.
Lisa, we want to try one more time?
Got himself muted.
Well.
So it looks like John, his report is attached. I'm guessing he's not here. Right? Any questions on that? Or Casey, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Can you guys tell me if you can hear me now?
Now we can.
We can hear you now. I'll get back to you in about 30 seconds here.
Sounds
Any
good.
questions on the Technology Director report? Okay, back to you, Lisa.
Well, my apologies for that technical problem. I have too many options here for microphone and speakers. So are you able to see the reconciliation worksheet?
Yes.
Okay, so the first item here is the reconciliation, the bank reconciliation, the bank statement, and then the MSDLAF statement. Then we have the expense report for October by fund and by program. And then we have the revenue report by fund and by program through October. This is kind of the main report that I usually talk about, showing the cash balance in October of 2020 versus October of 2021. And you can see year over year, we're up $900,000. We're up $756,000 in cash over the previous month. The next items are the budget, basically as of Thursday, which was the last day I was in Lake Park. And then we have the budget to actual comparison year to date of October 2021 to October 2020. I made a couple notes here. The red A, 21K has been drawn down from the COVID-related mental health grant, and about 68K has been drawn down from the ESSER 2 grant since the last board meeting. There's about 188K remaining of ESSER 2 funds available, and 15K of that has already been expended but not yet drawn down. Food service looked kind of strange. Last year it was 12% of budget. This year it's 20%. I looked back at that and it looked like there was a delay in payment receipts from SFSP. And then my red C there, the community service activities up over last year at this time, most likely due to less COVID restrictions going on right now. So the other thing I added new this month, Dr. Godfrey asked that I put together a reserved restricted balances. Basically, this is an estimate. What we're doing is we're taking what the ending balances were from fiscal 21, or estimating the annual revenue, which we can get off of a site from MDE. I'm putting in the actual expenses to date through October, and then we're coming up with an estimated ending fund balance. And these are the restricted funds. And just a couple reminders that, you know, the revenue, that's an estimate. It can change based on enrollment and any changes to state law. And, you know, the revenues, they contain estimates for the entire year, while the expenditures only contain expenses incurred through October. We haven't received all this cash for the restricted revenue estimates above. And those funds are received monthly from state receipts and 3 times a year from remittances from counties. The last report that we usually look at a little bit here, because it's a good summary, is basically spending by fund for vendor payments versus payroll payments. So that's what I had at this point. We do have the audit completed, and that presentation is a little further down in the agenda. And Brian is standing by to give us that presentation. Were there any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Okay, Superintendent, are you ready? Dr. Godfrey? 4.4. I think we're back on track now. Nope, not quite yet.
Okay, I'll run through this quickly. Some of these items that are on here are actually in the agenda. So currently, COVID-19 Emergency Temporary Standard Plan, which was created by OSHA. We're working with Lakes Country Co-op on that. In this plan, a lot of it has to do with the way our testers or anybody in the office that comes in contact with a suspected case of COVID addresses it with their wearing of PPE. And it's become a lot more stringent than before. So we're actually going through the process of getting that PPE. We've got quite a bit now. The next step is the N95 masks. COVID testing, we received our Binax Now over-the-counter test kits. Some of those have gone home to students. We use those when a student has symptoms and we send them home, and the parents can take that test home if they choose and use it, or if they've been close contact with a case and the parents need it for a better frame of mind. peace of mind, they can take one home. And we sent a few home already. If the test kit, if they test them, it's negative, then the child can come back to school sooner. As you are, I'm sure, well aware, administration imposed a mask mandate through OSHA. That mask mandate was supposed to take, vaccine mandate was supposed to take effect January 4th. Those who are unvaccinated, they would have to test weekly and wear a mask. That's been suspended as of now due to a court case in District 5. So currently we have a testing group. We call them the testers, for lack of a better way of calling it. Myself as the administrator, Ms. Fox is our district test coordinator. She's also a COVID coordinator and was named COVID coordinator from the beginning, so she just kind of continued that. Then at each building we have two testers, Jim Rislin, Art Meyer at the high school, Barb Jensen, Craig Bear at the elementary school. We've had the training, so myself and Susan can test as well in case somebody's not available. This is for staff. If they feel that they've been in contact and for their peace of mind would rather test, or if they're having symptoms and they want to test, we have 15-minute rapid results test. They have a 50% false negative, 96 to 98% true positive. So it's a way to kind of triage, I guess. But still, we'll support our staff if they feel they needed to go to a provider and do further testing. Working on a student advisory cabinet. This is a group of students, 7th grade through 12, who will help us make decisions in the district pertaining to culture and climate. Also, there will be a community service component to that. So we'll do some community service projects. The deadline to apply is November 30th. I do have quite a few applications. I'm hoping to get some more. I should have a determination who's on that team by December 15th, and then we'll have a first meeting before break and then continue after that. Recently signed a contract with Prairie Pest Control because we've seen mice coming from the ceilings, the high school. I heard a scream and I almost screamed in return. So, and it was a very minimal contract, less than $1,000, and they will be here to mitigate that problem. We're looking at staff procurement cards. A procurement card is a state sponsored Visa card for our teachers with a $250 limit for classroom supplies. It's going to allow staff the convenience to purchase items for their classrooms when a requisition of purchase order is not available. I think all of our teachers can speak to maybe going out of town, seeing certain supplies they can use in their classroom to decorate, to use with their students, have to come back and get a purchase order. Hopefully the item's still there, try and work with the vendor to get that item. Or in the summertime, we go to bigger cities, they usually have teacher supply stores where you can get all kinds of things for your classroom. At any rate, it's very inconvenient. So this will basically be a Visa card for our teachers to use with a $250 limit. That will be tracked through their turning in receipts. They can't go over that. All purchases are property of the district. Those teachers can use them in their classrooms for the eternity of time they're here. The total cost of the district will be $14,513.75. It's prorated too for this partial FTEs. I've done this in several other districts. It's very successful, very convenient for teachers. Takes a lot of attention off of them purchasing things. And I also have so they'll actually have to sign a credit application just like any credit card. I also have the guidelines for using it that they'll have to sign as well, which just says basically I'll use it in good faith. I won't use it for cash advances. I won't use it to purchase personal items and so forth. I'm working with both Amanda and Lisa. It's sponsored by, or it's backed by the board of OMB from the state. So we're just trying to find more guidelines too. So if this isn't something for the board to take action on tonight, I just want to make you aware of what we're working on.
Is that a $250 annual limit?
Yes, $250 annual. That's a 3 application. It was sent back with some minor revisions. I got that done and sent it back to them. Truth and Taxation meeting. We've got it scheduled for December 6th at 7 p.m. at the High School Media Center. Brady Mars will help us lead that. Basically just discussing with the public what our levies will be for the year. And then started working with Partnership for Health to to find support for building a greenhouse. So, my vision is to bring back our ag program, to expand it to include ag science, ag tech, ag business, and a variety of different innovative ways of using our ag program. I do want a state-of-the-art greenhouse. So fully automated, where we can use hydroponics, aquaponics, and a variety of different things. So we're working with them to find sponsors to help us with that. When that will happen, I'm not sure, but we've been in touch with them. Becky and I have had a meeting with them, and then we're working on a donation letter, and they're connecting us with some other entities. That's all I have.
Any questions for Dr. Godfrey?
At the Visa card at $250 limit, that would start?
That would start once we get all the parameters in and the board approves it. So I would like the board to approve it. Also, the thing about this, there's a cash back incentive to it. So you get like 5 or 10% cash back. So it's not a tremendous amount, but this will, again, the convenience, and plus we do get a little bit of incentive for using it. Office of Business and Management, that's what it is.
Is that normally a part of do teachers submit a budget annually too? Is it a part of that budget, or is it separate, or how does that work?
It will be separate. So what happens is teachers don't necessarily submit a budget, they submit requisitions. But outside those requisitions of the normal things they would buy for their class, there are different things. I mean, elementary orders, bulletin board orders, things like that aren't readily available. It just gives them the opportunity to purchase it. I know in the cities there are teacher supply stores. I mean, they're phenomenal. But when you go there, you either use your own card and have to try and seek reimbursement, or you ask them to hold on to it and you work with the school to submit a requisition, get a purchase order, and go through all of that. And sometimes it's gone by the time you're ready. Or maybe certain supplies, as we move into project-based learning, certain supplies for a unit they're doing, and rather than going through all the process, so just give them a little bit more convenience.
You've got this line item in the budget already then?
Sean and I worked with the budget and looked at a few areas where we could pull it through. There are a few areas that were, I will say, over budgeted. I think it was just a fail safe that we don't necessarily need to have as much money in those line items. So the money is in the budget.
As long as it's in the budget, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, 4.6, Transportation and Facilities Director. Do you want to touch on that at all, or?
I can touch a little bit. So I'm going to meet with bus drivers tomorrow. We're going to discuss moving forward from here and the few concepts I have, which I'll explain to the board later in the agenda. Also, we need to look at getting our activities routes covered. I would like to work on getting covered at least 2 months at a time. Work with bus drivers first and get their preference, then probably work with Olander to fill the remainder of those positions. Yep, there's a couple items further down the list that we need to talk about. Retiring the bus that we know is incapable of repairing at cost. So really that's where we are at this time. I will say this, when our last school late start was probably a good call. We did have 2 buses get stuck. One of them was a pretty precarious situation. So just know that I'm going to make those decisions based on our bus driver safety and our student safety in the future.
Questions? 4.7, Food Service Director. That report was attached. Are there any, I don't see Cheryl here. Are there any questions or comments? Activities Director. That report's also attached.
Yeah, just to touch on a couple points there. We had our conference and district meetings that first week in November, and we had a few names on there. Tatum Hall, she won Coach of the Year in the Pine Prairie for volleyball. Tremendous accomplishment for her and her team. Maddie Thompson was Defensive Player of the Year. And then they had a couple honorable mentions as well, Thea Madsen and Bryn Stahlberger. And then for football, we had 3 kids make all district. It was Brody Chilton, Troy Hymans, and then
Zeke.
Noel. And then honorable mention, Caden Besky. Can't think of the other.
Drew Harris, Mark Peterson.
Yep, all 3 of those made honorable mentions. So
It was nice to see some names represent the district in conference in some fall sports. And then cross country, we sent 2 runners off the state cross country meet down at St. Olaf in Northfield, Minnesota. Ellen Shower and Taylor Johnson. Taylor got 59th, and then Ellen Shower got 34th. We got a nice little send off for him the Friday before the meet down there at the elementary and high school. So thank you to Mr. Meyer and Mr. Barr for letting us do that. It was a great little sight to see, and I hope to see many more of those sites moving forward with some of our activities. And then I think I just got a list of some upcoming events. First competition dates for wrestling, boys basketball, and girls basketball attached there as well.
You know how many runners were at the cross-country meets, so we can kind of scale how well they did?
Yeah, gosh, I can't remember how many, but it was
160.
100, yeah, it was 150 plus, I believe, in each boys and girls division. So we were represented very well down there.
That's what I thought. So I just, you see those numbers and it looks pretty low, but that's actually pretty darn good. When you look at
Pretty darn good, definitely. And, both of those student athletes will be back next year, so maybe they can improve on their results this year as well. So.
That was Taylor's our first ever boy to qualify the state tournament cross country.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
How's your wrestling team look?
I didn't get a chance to check into practice today. I want to say we were kind of right around, I think we had like 25 to 30 kids registered from both schools, Holly and Lake Park here. So I think it was kind of right in that 30 people in there today. So.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, which would include 5.1, consider approval of payment of Independent School District 2889 bills, claims, and the district financial report. 5.2, consider approval of minutes. 5.3, consider approval of the treasurer's report. 5.4, resignations and retirements. And 5.5, the consider approval of the extracurricular contracts, and you see those attached. I have a motion.
Make a motion, so moved.
Marge, do we have a second? Second by Austin. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 6, recognitions. 6.1, Midwest Rod and Custom, a $50 donation for the yearbook ad. 6.2, Marsh Auto Body, $50 donation for a yearbook ad. 6.3, Lake Park Fire Department, $150 donation for a yearbook ad. 6.4, Wagner Insurance Agency, $50 donation for a yearbook ad. 6.5, State Bank of Lake Park, $150 donation, again for a yearbook ad. And 6.6, Accessories Unlimited is a $1,000 donation for wrestling room mats. Thank you to all of those entities for their donations.
Madam Chair, may I just add one more?
Yep.
There was for quite a few years, there's been an anonymous donation for our food pantry, our food bank that we have for Thanksgiving and Easter. And I know the name does not want to be mentioned because that's the way, but I just, maybe they're listening. And again, I would like to thank them for giving unselfishly to that entity.
Absolutely. We thank the community for its ongoing support. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, old business, 7.1, retire bus 3.
We had discussed this during a work session. Due to the cost of repairs on this bus, it's not, I don't believe it's feasible to do that considering the mileage on the bus. And we do have an individual that would like the bus if we're going to. My thoughts were if we weren't going to continue to rotate it within our fleet, that we release it and scrap it. And hopefully Nelson International would scrap it. But Jim Martinson has asked me if he could have it if we decide to rotate it out. It's my recommendation that we retire from our fleet. We do have plenty of buses to rotate in. And with my long-range transportation plan, we'll have a regular rotation for purchasing of buses as well. So this would be a bus that needs to be retired.
With the individual that wants it, would you then open it up for other bidding, or how would you handle that?
We could. I'm not sure if it's worth bidding out because it has to be transported back. It can't be driven back. It would have to be towed. We could do that most certainly. I just have a feeling nobody's going to bite on that. He did say he would make sure that it gets towed back, cover those costs.
And it's sitting in Fargo right now, correct?
Yes.
Any kind of cost that we have to pay just for their diagnostics?
I'm not sure. I haven't been given any cost on that. They have been pretty lenient and letting us keep it there until we make a decision.
This would make us from a full fleet, one bus short.
Well, we do have a bus to rotate in. We got a brand new bus, and we do have spares that are probably in better shape, less miles than this one. And then we are through our ESSER funds, we do have funds to purchase a new bus, so we'll be in the process of doing that as well. So really, this is a bus we would be rotating out of. It's just going to happen a little bit sooner.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So,
Motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 7.2, replace wrestling room wall pads.
So this is a discussion that has been before the board before, and then again this year. One question the board wanted to know is why the mats had to be replaced. They do have wood in them, and it's not fire retardant or fire resistant. So the fire marshal said, and this is the second time he mentioned this, that they need to be replaced, and if he came again, we'd be fine. So we presented this quote to the board before. For replacement and install and everything, we came up with $28,100. I did speak with a colleague of mine at Drell's in Grand Forks, and I got a better quote. It ends up being about just under $22,000. It's going to be the same amount of time, though. As I said, it's still 4 to 6 weeks to get in. Right now, we do have kind of, I don't know how to describe it. We do have the mat situation taken care of for now. It's not pretty, but it'll work until these come in.
How long does it take to install? Is that like a day project? Or?
Yes. So they have cutouts in them for light switches, for sockets and everything. So what they'll do is they'll come in. As they come in, they'll measure those, they'll cut them on spot, and they'll mount them. So I would say a day, but I can't guarantee that.
Then one thing to add to that too, I've been in contact with that Southern Inspection Group as well. And they did bring that original quote to 28,000. They brought it down to 24.5, I think now. So they did bring it down a little bit.
Do they say where they're cutting cost out?
I think it might have been just on the product itself. They took a little bit off the top there.
So pretty much their overhead, I'm sure.
So I guess my question is, the school's only, what, 10 years old? So did this fire code magically just change?
Well, I was also told it was addressed in 2019. So before that time, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that I'm a little frustrated about. The school was put together and fire codes don't normally change that frequently. So, I mean, it's neither here nor there. It's a little bit late but what these businesses, they're upstanding and these all meet fire codes, the current fire codes, and we're not going to get caught again.
Correct. And I've tried to, I don't know about this business. Drell's, I do know. I have a long-standing relationship with this business and I've used them for several years. That's one thing I expressed to them, the reason why we need to replace. And they were going to a vendor show and they said they work special on this. So they worked with the vendor at the vendor show. So this is actually a discounted price for us.
either quotes have the logos on them, or they just red pads, or?
I mean, as far as,
Like if you look on the agenda, that SMI has custom graphics.
oh, yeah, they'll put custom graphics.
I just didn't know if either of those included that.
So do we need a motion to recommend which entity to go with, or how would you like?
A motion to approve one or the other.
And we have funding to cover it in the budget. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure that our wrestling team is taken care of, but is this we're gonna have to rob from somewhere else to fund this?
No, this will come out of our Lang Range facilities maintenance
Okay.
budget. I worked with Sean on this and looked at how much we had. So between this and the other item we have on here, we have plenty of funds in there to take care of it.
So Holly would not help out with this purchase.
Say that again?
Does Holly help out with this purchase?
My guess is no, because it's our facility.
It's our facility.
Right. But
No, and I think they have their own facilities and their own equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to go down that path because we send our track athletes over to use their track and, it all washes out in the end. I would imagine. So do we have a preference on which way we would want to go then?
Well, I would pick Jarrell's just because it's a lower cost regardless. And then we do have $1,000 donation to go towards it. I did seek other donations and I've heard nothing back. Not to say that those won't come in eventually.
Like to make a motion. Gerald Sports.
We have a motion on the table to go with Cheryl's. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to new business, 8.1, review and approve the audit from I. Bailey.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to share my screen quick. All right, are we ready? Everything looks like it's good. You can hear me. I just want one more okay, and we'll get going.
We're good.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Brian Stavanger, partner with Eide Bailly, here to present the results of the fiscal year 21 audit. I know within that board packet, there's multiple documents. What we choose to present, and this started many, many years ago, and if you've been on the board for many years, you're used to this one. It's the executive summary. We take the full audit and we summarize it. We break it down into a very high level document and also provide historical results in there as well, so you can see some trends. So I'll walk through that executive summary. If for any reason we need to jump into the full audit, certainly can do so, but usually this executive summary is more than enough. I'll pause periodically to make sure if there's any questions or added comments that you have the opportunity to ask those and make those, and we'll get started. So first few slides, the audit results and findings. So as we go through the audit, really what you're hiring an external auditor to do is recalculate, verify, do all the required audit procedures, and ultimately give you our opinion, our professional opinion on your financial statements. Received a clean, unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion that there is out there in the audit world, the external audit world. It's what you really want every year. It's what you received historically, and hopefully what you can continue to receive going forward. So again, a clean, unmodified opinion. This year, we also had the joy of doing another separate audit, just focusing on the federal funds. So historically, this district has been very, very close to meeting or exceeding the threshold. The threshold is $750,000. Anytime any entity spends more than that, it triggers this federal audit. It is a federal audit requirement with all the CARES Act funds, and likely going into the next few years, at least with the American Rescue Plan and all of those. We'll likely continue to have this audit. This is a new audit. For this district, very, very common with a lot of other smaller districts in the area too, just all this extra federal funds triggering this extra audit. So in fiscal year 21, spent $1,120,000 of federal funds, so exceeding that threshold. So this is a very compliance-heavy audit, making sure you're spending the dollars according to the grant agreements. Again, going back to this is a federal requirement, and they really guide us on what we need to look at, what we need to test. The good thing here is another clean, unmodified opinion on this federal audit. And I've got one more slide on the findings, and then I'll pause, and then we'll get into some numbers. So really, financial statement audit, one finding this year, which is actually a decrease. Typically, or I should say historically, there's been 2 additional findings with Brady Martz coming on board. In fiscal year 20, it was really a partial year, still kind of getting integrated into the district. Fiscal year 21, with a full year utilizing them in that business office, was able to eliminate a couple findings. Still have one finding due to the smaller office staff or smaller size of office staff, the segregation of duties, but again, declining findings, which is a very, very good thing. Federal funds, that federal audit, no findings. That's very, very good, very, very important. That's what you want to see. If you have any findings there's just the potential for the Department of Education to come in, the potential federal Department of Education or U.S. Treasury. So really, you want to make sure you're spending those funds appropriately. And when you go through an audit, confirming that is very, very good. So no findings there. And then lastly, Minnesota legal compliance. So as we go through our annual audit every year, we have to, based on the state auditor and the state, look at conflicts of interest, bid testing, student activities as part of that, or UFARS compliance. We had 2 findings related to student activities. One was inactive accounts. The rules state that if any account has no activity for the year, either it needs to be disposed of or a written plan has to be put in place by the activity advisor, and then kind of how you're going to spend it. There were several accounts that had inactivity in fiscal year 21. Also, one expenditure that we looked at was for gift cards. Gift cards are explicitly unallowable expenditures out of student activity accounts. So those are the 2 student activity findings. So overall, a decline in findings, which is great. And I really can't emphasize more the federal funds. Very, very important that you don't have findings there, and you didn't, which is a great thing. So I'll pause there before we start to get into the numbers, see if there's any questions on the audit results or findings.
The inactive student, that's due to, I'm assuming, the COVID-related issues?
Yeah, in fiscal year 20, so really 2 audits ago, MDE waived that rule in fiscal year 20. Fiscal year 21, it was really re-implemented. Now, yes, COVID is the reason for most, if not all of those. Really the way to, without disposing of them, the way to eliminate that finding is just to get that written plan in place as to how you're going to spend it going forward. But yes, COVID is what has driven most, if not all of those.
There are a large amount of gift cards. Is that?
Well, the gift cards were purchased to actually donate to families in need. It was brought to my attention. I told them we had to find a different process for doing it from this point forward. But basically, it was to purchase food.
And as far as the inactive student activity, that's a common one across multiple schools, right? That's pretty common.
It has been common the last couple of years. There are districts that put that written plan in place. If you have that written plan in place, then there is no finding. So that's really the takeaway there is if you're monitoring those and at the end of the year you've noticed that a handful haven't, just to get that written plan in place, then you remove that finding. That written plan acknowledges that yes, there was inactivity. We do have a plan to spend those going forward, but yes, very common in the last couple of years. All right, let's move into some numbers. Cash and investments. So this is looking really district-wide. After this slide, we're going to get into more focus on different funds of the district, but district-wide cash and investments, you can see Good growth at the beginning of this graph, then very stable, and then the last 3 fiscal years, very good growth in the cash and investments. You're going to see that reflected also in your fund balance and your general fund, and we'll get more into that later. But roughly 4.5 million in cash at the end of fiscal year 21. The big driver in the last couple of years has been just the increase in federal programming. So you've got a bunch of money coming in, but also just other operating efficiencies that you've gained. But good, strong growth in that cash and investment balance overall district wide. Any questions on that before we move into the general fund? Okay, we're going to spend quite a few slides on the general fund, the main operating fund of the district. Then we'll do some high level review of community service and food service, and then we'll be done. General fund, really a big driver in the general fund and really across the district, but general fund because it's so reliant on state aid and federal aid. ADM served or students are really the main driver of those aid revenues. So we like to put this up there just so you have a good understanding of where you've been or where the district has been the last 10 years. A slight decrease in students or ADM's average daily membership. That's one way to measure it through the Department of Education. A slight decrease in those students, but overall, you can even see that's very consistent with really the last 5 years, right around that 700 level. So not a lot of fluctuation, but acknowledging a slight decrease in fiscal year 21. Next, we'll look at the budget to actual. The budget to actual in the general fund, and this is really where I usually apologize to any of the non-numbers people because there's a ton of numbers on here. But we always want to talk about the budget, really review how did the actual results for the fiscal year come in compared to the budget. You've got both original and final. If you did amend the budget throughout the year, that would be reflected in this final budget. You can see here really no amendments. So this is think way back to May or June of 2020, trying to anticipate what fiscal year 21 activity is going to look like. That's really what this budget is. The actual results in the general fund for both revenues and expenditures are in this column here. And really my focus is going to be on the far right column, the variance between the budget and the actual results. So the revenues, which is this first category, what do we have here? About 4 lines and then a total. Total revenues came in over budget or more than budgeted by about 7.5%. So budgeted just over $8 million in revenues, came in $8,667,000. Sorry, the vast majority of that driven by federal sources. So this is very common that we're seeing, all the CARES Act funds, and it's coming from several different sources, potentially not even the Department of Education. You've got townships and others helping the district out. So a lot of conservative budgeting that we saw, not only with this district, but other districts across the region, but also other local and county. This other category, which other really is activity fees, admission fees, county apportionment, other miscellaneous. A pretty consistent conservative budget approach year to year that we see with this district, and really was the same here. Don't want to anticipate miscellaneous items, miscellaneous donations. If they come in, great, and that really just kind of drops to the bottom line. But overall, a very positive variance here on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, as you go through each category, it's going to be up, it's going to be down. But overall, I really want to point out, I'm not sure how you can improve on this. I guess maybe that's the goal. Good luck, Lisa. And I know Amanda's not on. But you came within $3,200 of an almost $8 million budget within your general fund. So close that it spits out, when we round it, a 0% variance. So right on the expenditure side, an incredible job. As I mentioned, you go through, there's some positive variances. The big, what I'll call negative variances within that special education line item. That really is the gear and the CRF grant expenditures. Not kind of knowing where those dollars were coming in and where they would be spent. So, partially an offset of this federal sources on the revenue. But overall, don't want to take away from the big picture. A very, very, very good job from a budget standpoint. As you continue down, and I am going to pause in a little bit here if there's any questions. You also annually budget a transfer out to the community service fund. We'll go through that when we get to that community service fund graph. But overall, anticipated about an $82,000 positive increase in your fund balance. Came in much better than that, almost $700,000. And that really increases your fund balance, which are your reserves, your rainy day fund. We'll get into more details on the next few slides, but took that total fund balance to over $3 million at the end of the fiscal year. I want to pause there. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of things I went through, and just see if there's any questions on that budget to actual or any added comments to make.
I had a question about that special education instruction. What's the difference of 181?
So that means that's money we did not spend towards special education because there were federal funds that came with that. So when we look at all the CARES Act money, really those are money that supplants what's in the general fund. So if we had so much money for special education built in the general fund, then we got the federal dollars, that money that was already built in the general fund just gets carried over because there's a different source of money that will pay that.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, just remember this fund balance here, roughly 3.1 million. So very important to have a fund balance for these various reasons. Fund balances, which is really your reserves. It's governmental accounting, so anytime it's accounting or other related items within the governmental setting, it gets a little more challenging than just as simple as here's our fund balance. But really, there's different categories. I'm going to have you focus on two of them, which are the two that you have within your fund balance, which is restricted right here. That is essentially the funds you get through the Department of Education, and they're detailed out on the next slide, but things such as staff development, operating capital, gifted and talented, safe schools, anything that you have been provided through revenues from the Department of Education that remain unspent at the end of the fiscal year are carried forward into the future, and then they're designated as restricted. So they still only can be spent on those specific items. They do end up in that total fund balance, but very important to know that those are restricted, can't be spent in any other area. So we definitely, when we get further on the analysis of the fund balance, we do take those out because they are restricted for specific purposes. Everything else that's outside of those restrictions is considered unassigned. Unassigned is really truly your reserves or your rainy day fund, and that's what we analyze. That's what the Department of Education analyzes. You know, what are your true reserves? That would be this unassigned category. Here are all of those different fund balances, and really here's that ending, you know, this fund balance at the end of the year, that far right column. This is at the end of the year, that 3.1 million. So you can see all the different restrictions up here. You know, those are all categorized really based on account coding. So as the revenue comes in, it gets coded to the right area, and as the expenses are made, they also get coded to the right area and really reduce that fund balance. All the restricted fund balances, and then here's the one unassigned, which is really what I say is your true rainy day fund, your true reserve. So of that 3.1 million, just under 2.4 million is the actual reserved fund, or I'm sorry, really rainy day fund or unrestricted fund balance that we're going to analyze going forward into the future. I got one more slide I want to show you before we kind of flip and analyze that fund balance, and then I'll pause for questions. This is taking that total fund balance. It's got the different categories, color coded. It's got the actual dollar amounts down below. Another graph where we've got a lot of information, but you can see the total fund balance. Really, 2017 and prior, you know, was right around that $1 million level. You know, it jumped up a little bit in 13, but then it's just seen real strong, steady growth. And at the end of fiscal year 21, over $3 million in total fund balance. The blue is a representation of the unassigned, or really that unrestricted, really your true reserves. You can see how much that has grown. That was under $500,000. Really right around 2018 is when it started to increase. And you can see good substantial increases there. What we're going to do is we're going to analyze that as a percentage of your budget. So the dollar amounts are pretty big when you're talking about millions of dollars. It's important to flip that and say, well, what is that as a percentage of our budget? What do we really have in reserves compared to our budget? Before I get there, I do want to pause if I need to go back and forth, just see if there's any questions on the dollar figures and fund balance categories. Okay, so let's get to a quick analysis of the general fund balance. So you do have a policy and you want it to be no less than 6% of your general fund expenditures. There's a national organization, the GFOA. They put out a recommendation to really all governments. So take this for what it is. I mean, it really is if you're a city, a school, a county, they're really not distinguishing between the different local governmental units, which isn't really fair, but we wanted to give you another target that's out there. They're saying 2 months, have 2 months worth of reserves at that national level. That's what they're recommending. So here's the graph. This graph is a representation of the last 10 years of your fund balances. And really, I want you to focus on the blue. The blue is the unrestricted. Sometimes, or really previous to 2020, you've also made some earmarks, some internal earmarks. And when you make that internal earmark, it actually reduces the unassigned. But I don't want you to focus on that. I want you to focus on the blue for each year. The blue is the way the Department of Education analyzes your fund balance. It's really the way that we, or that I personally look at your fund balance. What do you have for unrestricted? Pull out all the restrictions and then what's left over. That's all unrestricted. So this line down here is a representation of your fund balance, really minimum goal. You want to have at least 6%. You can see you were right above that, really close in this 14 to 18 time frame, and then you were able to grow it to a much stronger position. At the end of fiscal year 21, it's right around that 30%. We've got one other line in here because a big question we get asked a lot of times is, how do we compare to peer districts across the state? This is the statewide average. Statewide average, generally between 20 and 23% is that statewide average. Smaller districts, you get into the 500 ADMs or less, they're generally going to have a much higher percentage. The larger districts, really 1,000 and above, maybe even larger than that, they're usually in that 10 to 15%, but on average 20 to 23%. You can see here, again, pointing out significant growth and just around 30% in your unrestricted fund balance in the general fund at the end of fiscal year 21. So we've just got a few more slides getting into some different funds. There's a lot of information provided to you on the general fund there. I'll pause again for any questions or added comments.
So just to reiterate on what Brian just said, the goal per policy is 6%, but currently we're at 30%, which is pretty nice.
All right. Really 2 more slides, 3 because the last one is any final questions, but 2 more slides of substance. Community service fund. So these last 2 slides are really only looking at the end of year fund balance. So at the end of year, what do you have for fund balance? What do you have for reserves? Not really looking at budget to actual, what are the revenues and expenditures? Just at the end of the year, where are the funds at? Community service fund. And if you have been a part of the board, really getting back to probably 2016 is when I really started talking more about it. This community service fund just continued to grow in deficit. And, I really started talking about it's fine that it's in a deficit, but now we're approaching 400,000. Back in 2018, it was over $500,000 in deficit, which is allowed. But at some point, something's got to be done. If that thing keeps going, it was growing at a pace of probably $75,000 a year in deficit. you're going to get to a point where what are you going to do? This is not good fiscal management within this community service fund. So worked really over a few years working with the board and the superintendent and business manager at that time to say, how do you get out of this? Put in a long-term plan. And I think the long-term plan, some of you may be familiar with it, but it was really, let's put in a 10-year plan of getting out of a deficit. And let's just get back to a zero balance and then kind of reflect on what do we want to do after that. And it's been awesome to see that plan has been followed. You can see that deficit is slowly reducing. You're not taking a 1-year enormous impact in the general fund, because really you're providing an annual transfer over from the general fund. You're doing it over time. If something were to happen, the general fund couldn't do it 1 year, that's okay. Don't do it all at once. Have a long-term plan. That plan was started really beginning in 2019, and it continues. Essentially, about $110,000 is coming in annually from the general fund to help get this fund back up to, really that break-even point, and then reassess. So I always like coming to do the audit presentation to say, great job following that plan. I was starting to get worried as an auditor of when does this stop? It was good to see the board really step up and say, we are going to put in place a plan, and you're following that plan. So wonderful, wonderful job there from an auditor standpoint. Still at a deficit. It's much, much better than it had been, and you continue to address it. Any questions or added comments on that community service fund? Okay, one more graph. Food service fund. This is a 10-year look at ending fund balance in the food service fund, just like the previous graph. The one difference on this food service fund is we've added this line here, which is an indication of, per state statute, the maximum allowable fund balance worth of operating expenditures. You can see, periodically you've hit that. You seem to have hit that again in 2021. What does that mean? There's no penalty. All it means is additional paperwork, although that paperwork I believe is now electronic. We got to figure out something new to call that. But really, MDE says, hey, if you hit that, it's okay. We just got to have a documented plan in place on how you're going to spend that down. So I wouldn't be alarmed at that at all. And actually, this has become very common. The last few years, so much federal money coming in district-wide, but especially this food service fund. These fund balances are exceeding their maximum amounts. So really, like I said, don't be alarmed. It's happening very frequently across the region and the state. Just more of a headache to have to plan to spend that down. So just want to point that out, but still a very good, strong food service operation for the district. Okay. Any final questions? And I guess I do have one more slide. I gotta say thank you. But any final questions in relation to the fiscal year 21 audit? Okay, a big thank you. A big thank you. Can I say thank you? Big thank you. Thank you to Lisa.
Oh, no, we have one question.
I gotta go back then.
Brian, I was a little late jumping in there, but how do we compare to other schools that you've done the audit on?
Big picture, how do you compare to other schools? A lot of schools really have been moving in. Sorry, I'm going to just slide back to this. What we've seen a lot is this trajectory, increased fund balances. 2020 and 2021, the influx of federal money has had from a fund balance perspective, a positive impact. I would say your growth is much more than a lot of other districts, but this is the general trajectory that we're seeing. Just the influx of money is really, really helping. What's going to be the lasting impact of that? We're not sure, but it certainly looks like the next few years. So from a financial standpoint, you're definitely going in a similar direction, and the impact of that is you are at a very good, strong position. You've got flexibility. You've got, there's not this, oh my gosh, what happens, in any 1 year, which is really where you were at back here. So good growth, you've got more flexibility, and that has become more commonplace for districts. Food service fund, same thing. I mentioned that, but just there's a lot of aid really coming from the federal government that has really helped local governments, including school districts. So not all too uncommon with where you're at, but I would say you're probably a little bit above some of the other districts with some of the decisions you've made from a financial standpoint.
Thank you.
Sorry, I cut you off there. Any other questions? Okay, well, a quick thank you to Lisa, and I know Amanda's not here. She's enjoying some time off. Amanda came in, I mentioned right away, a partial year in fiscal year 20, and that went probably better than we all thought it would go. Having a full year of Amanda and then Lisa joining, it went really, really good. We continued to learn more about the things we're doing, the things they're doing, but definitely moving in the right direction. Had to do that federal audit, which was new this year, new procedures, new requests. It's more work, but we were able to get it done and get this to you before the end of November, which is always the goal. So a big thank you to all the efforts from Amanda, Lisa, and everyone else who has helped us. I will now stop presenting and stop talking and just entertain any other final questions that you might have before I end my participation in this meeting.
Well, I'd like to say, Brian, thank you for your time on this and your work and presenting to us tonight.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 8.2, our school board vacancy application. We received one application from Dave Swenson. Do you have anything to add to that?
I do not. Dave's here tonight. I know the board may have some questions they want to ask him or chat a little bit. Dave, you want to come over and have a seat?
Yeah.
With us?
I think Mark and Marge maybe met or talked about questions, maybe? No? Yes?
Come up here and tell a little something about yourself.
In the middle of you. Put you in a hot seat. Over to semi-hot one. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I've got 2 kids in the district right now, 2nd grader and a 10th grader. Just looking to get more involved in the community and just give service. Really. It's kind of my general perspective. I'd like to learn more about what goes on here and how it works. That's my quick intro.
So Dave, you haven't been on a school board before?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yep. Do a lot of admin type things in my day job from home. Work with several teams, that sort of thing. In the technology world, actually.
Where's Casey? Sign you up to help Casey.
Dave helped us when we were desperate for interviews as technology coordinator. Well, most of our heads, Mr. McDonald applied. They stepped up and helped us with those interviews.
And I believe, Dave, you joined in on some of the long-term growth and planning meetings earlier this year, right?
I did, yeah. I think it was toward the end of those meetings, but I did jump in on those a little bit. Any specific questions?
What kind of things are you looking to kind of focus or do on the board?
I don't have a specific agenda. I think, for me personally, it's kind of getting more involved in the community and understanding what's here and how to contribute to that. So yeah, I don't have a specific agenda to come in and do or figure out, but be of service.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So between yourself, administration, between yourself and teacher, between yourself and superintendent, what do you feel your role will be in your relationship with those different groups of people?
That's a great question. I feel like at this point I would be like all ears to listen to all the groups because I don't have a perspective for that. But then, I think as a parent, you have the teachers that you interact with and other ones you see and the principals. Chavarro here. Be a liaison to those things and and the board is to try and figure out what's the best for the whole district as a whole, the students, teachers.
Any other questions? We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second, Basson, is there any further discussion in general?
I was wondering, it's only been a couple weeks of posting. Should we wait a couple, like a month grace period?
I know you reached out with that question to me yesterday, and I did leave a message at MSBA, but I did not receive a call back. My only concern is because we did put it out there and gave a deadline and we did get an applicant, I think, I'm guessing they would tell us to move forward, but I don't know that officially. Any other discussion?
Any legalities? I guess I know the big thing with me. Or
No.
are you able to move forward then?
That was due to the time frame in which the slot that you filled, that the time frame with which that board member stepped down. We don't have that issue. So this term would be, we would officially seat at the next board meeting, and it would run until, if Dave decided to run, he would have to either run or the seat would be completely open in November. So it would be a short-term appointment. Any other questions or discussion?
So we're voting on approving?
Yes.
To jumping on this meeting?
Well, it would be officially seated next meeting.
The next meeting?
Yeah. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thanks.
Seat you officially next month.
Welcome to next month. We'll put you in the chair over there.
Okay, 8.3, looks like it may be a presentation from Ellers.
Yes.
Jody?
Got me in the hot seat?
Wherever you feel comfortable.
I'll go anywhere. All right, good evening. Congratulations on the successful passage of both bond referendum questions on November 2nd. That's so exciting. We're very happy to see that. And so now we are ready to move forward with giving you our updated estimates. So we put together some estimates for the bond back in the summertime when you needed to submit everything to the Minnesota Department of Education for their review and comment process. And we use those estimates as part of the election process. So tonight we'll kind of go through the information then leading up to the bond sale and some updated estimates on the financial schedules. So I'll just highlight a few things on each of the pages. If you have questions on any of the information, don't hesitate to let me know. But on the first page here, you'll see that the two questions that were approved by the voters resulted in the $22,960,000 of authority. And that is what we plan to move forward with. That term or call feature, when we issue bonds, we are issuing these over a 20-year period, but they will have a call date. So there'll be a date and time when you're able to prepay and refinance the bonds at a lower interest rate should that be available to you. So the call date on this will be February 1st of 2030 for the 31 and later maturities. At the bottom there, the resolution that was prepared by your bond attorney does have state credit enhancement language included in it. The state guarantees the payment of your debt in the state of Minnesota without any charge to participate in that program, but that allows you to get a higher rating on the bonds, and that is what's explained on the next page. So right now, you just have a state credit enhanced rating only on the bonds that are outstanding. Back at the time when you issued those bonds, that was pretty common. Now it's really important to have an underlying rating. So we will work with either Standard & Poor's or Moody's, and you can see the ratings that they would assign under the State Credit Enhancement Program. And then you'll also have an underlying rating that will get assigned to you. Basis for recommendation kind of explains the background information, but basically this, you can see that bottom bullet point, the option is consistent with the plans communicated to the district or to the community as part of the election. And then in the method of sale or placement, we will do a competitive bid for your bonds, just like we've done for you in the past. And just like when you put your roofing project out to bid or anything else, so whoever gives us the lowest bid on the interest rate is who we'll award to. We are seeing premium bids, and we do have a premium estimate calculated into your financials now, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. The next page, neither of your outstanding bonds right now have any callable maturities, but you will have a call date on this, and we'll always be monitoring that to see if at what point in time it would make sense to refinance those. Couple of regulatory disclosures there relating to continuing disclosure and arbitrage monitoring. And then investment of bond proceeds. We've already been talking to Dr. Godfrey on this, and we are waiting to get a draw schedule from ICS, which I talked to Lori today, and they'll be working on that for us. So you'll get the bond proceeds up front, but of course you're not going to spend the money right away. So as you spend those funds, you'll be able to invest the unspent funds, and we'll help you take care of that. And then the other service providers that we'll be working with. So Kennedy and Graven as the bond attorney, Bond Trust Services as the paying agent, and then either Standard & Poor's or Moody's will be working with on the rating itself. A little bit about the schedule then. We're presenting the pre-sale report tonight, and you have a resolution authorizing the sale of the bonds. And by your December 6th meeting, we'll make sure that we have the debt service levy updated on your long detailed levy report that you get from the Minnesota Department of Education. We'll move forward with preparing the official statement on your behalf, and we have a due diligence call to go through that with you. The rating agency call will be scheduled. We'll distribute the official statement to underwriters and financial institutions, and then we are scheduled to receive bids on the day of your meeting in January. We'll present those results to you that evening, and then close on February 17th, which is when you'll have the proceeds available for investment. So the next schedules are, if you studied your review and comment document at all, these are the same schedules that we included in that document. Those are required by the Minnesota Department of Education. So this right now shows you our sources and uses schedule, which ultimately shows you how much would be available for project costs. So we are assuming that we'll get a premium bid. You are allowed to deposit that premium into your construction fund. So you'll see, assuming we get this type of premium, and that'll all depend upon what the winning bidder gives us on the day of sale. But in this case, you'd have about $23,400,000 available for project costs, which is a little above what we were expecting initially. And I think, you know, with what we're seeing in the construction bidding process and some of the overages that some districts are experiencing right now, I think it'd be helpful to have a little bit of a cushion. So right now we're planning on that. The next schedule then is what the detailed debt service schedule will look like, and this is a wraparound schedule. So we are paying off principal after your principal on your existing bonds is paid off. So you'll see that there are bigger principal maturities later. Different than a home mortgage, each principal maturity on a municipal bond does have its own interest rate associated with it. So we talk about the overall interest rate, but just know that each of those maturities does have a separate interest rate associated with it, and you will lock into that interest rate on the day of sale. So it doesn't fluctuate or anything, but that's why those individual interest rates are listed there. You can see that the true interest cost rate is what we award the sale based on, and we're estimating about a 2.38% rate. So rates have been really, really nice and low, and we think that we'll be able to achieve that by the end of January. So this is kind of our detailed schedule now of your long-term debt plan. You can see your existing commitments in that first section there. So the bonds that you have outstanding, the proposed new school building bonds, and then combined totals. So right now, prior to the election, we were planning on a $150,000 home, a tax impact of about $64. This particular scenario shows a tax impact of $52. So it was about $5 a month, now a little bit over $4 a month. We'll take a look at this one more time, I think, before we submit to MDE, just because once you lock into this amount, that's what gets included on your levy, and then we can't change it on the day of sale. So we may want to consider just adding a little bit more cushion in there, since we're pretty well under the pre-election estimates, just to be safe with your January sale. If we do, we'll send you updated schedules so that you have those for your records. But as of right now, we feel pretty comfortable, and I'm, knock on wood, very certain that we're going to be able to achieve savings that will be, or interest rates that will be less than what we were expecting. This particular schedule has principal and interest totaling about $1.4 million lower than what we expected in the pre-election estimate. So with that lower interest rate, it makes a big difference, which is nice to be able to communicate that to your community. And again, on January 24th, we will lock into that interest rate, so we'll know exactly how it's looking then going forward. This is how the debt schedule looks. So again, the plan was to wrap around your existing debt. So your existing debt are the gray bars, and the blue bars are the new approved debt. So smaller interest-only payments to begin with, and then starting to pay off principal, and then ultimately paying it all off over the 20-year term of the bond issue. But our goal is always to keep that tax rate nice and level. Generally, taxpayers don't like to see a roller coaster. When they approve a new bond, they expect to see the increase that was explained to them as part of the process, but then we do like to keep things nice and level over time. So that's the goal with the schedule and the structure that we have set up. And that is everything that I have in the report. So you do have a resolution, and that is before you tonight. So
any questions on the report?
Since there's a lot of federal dollars going out, probably in January, there'd be a lot of different, is there going to be influx of that rate that could change then? Or?
Well, the rate likely will change a little bit, but we're hoping it might improve. So generally the bonds that we sell in January, we usually see a little dip in interest rates. And the reason for that is because the principal maturities you can see are always set up with February 1st dates. So we have a lot of bonds that now have call dates of February 1st, 2022. I was just up in Crookston, and they are refinancing their bonds that have a call date of 2/1/22. So those investors who will have their bonds called generally like to reinvest in municipal bonds. So we usually see increased demand in the month of January for municipal bonds, and that usually drives the interest rate down a little bit. So in the municipal bond market, that's the pattern we almost always see. Maybe 1 in 10 years it doesn't turn out that way, but that's what we're expecting for January again. And we've been, getting a lot of bids and getting nice low rates. So it's a really good time you are needing and getting debt that's approved by your voters, a good time to take advantage of the nice low rates. I've had a lot of people
around the 2.38.
Yeah, and over 20 years with the structure that you have set up, most of the principal payments are later in the schedule, and those generally demand a little higher rate. 2.38 is really nice and low, historically speaking, of course. And your financial results that I was paying close attention to the auditor tonight, because those will be really helpful to you too in your bond rating and attracting more investors with your strong financial position. That's an important factor as you go to market too.
Any other questions? So I read all of this?
No, you just need to read the bold. That's what is.
Thank you. Because I'm beginning to think that this chair reads the whole meeting.
I want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. So tonight, resolution stating that the intention of the school board to issue general obligation school building bonds series 2022A in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $22,960,000 and taking other actions with the respect thereto. That is it?
Perfect. Yes.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dave. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Marge. Any further discussion or questions? And this is a roll call vote. Dave?
Aye.
Becky? Aye. Marge?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Austin?
Aye.
And Marv is absent. The motion carries. Great.
So we'll be back in touch with results at the end of January for your meeting then, and keeping Tim busy between now and then.
2.5%, right?
What's that?
2.4%?
Yes, we hope, yes, yeah.
I think I heard
Lower is
199.
better.
Lower is better, for sure. Yeah,
Thank
everybody
you.
in the community will be happy with that, right? So, yes. All right, thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, 8.5, OSHA ETS plan.
So this is what we discussed a little bit earlier, and this is basically for your review. It doesn't need to be approved by the board. I just want you to be informed. Again, this does not include the mandatory vaccine mandate. This is just a draft at this time. But it will be our final ETS plan for those staff members that come in frequent contact with exposure. If you read through there, you can see that it's pretty stringent.
You said we do not need a motion? Has everybody had a chance to review this? Are there any questions or comments? Oh, Marge is reading.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I love OSHA.
Okay, moving on then to 8.6. And this is
So what we discussed at our last work session, and I met with the policy committee, and this is the verbiage that we came up with, and I'll read through it, and then I'll let Mark and Marge add to it if they feel there should be something else. But superintendent authorization to post open position, offer positions, and sign non-licensed staff contracts, miscellaneous 100. Superintendent is authorized to post open positions for both licensed and non-licensed staff and offer positions. Once non-licensed staff contracts are approved by Lake Park Audubon Board of Education, the superintendent has authority to sign such contracts to make employment official. This is just the first read.
So yeah, we discussed this and else at the last meeting was for a non-license, but decided maybe we should add a license also to that just to make it expedite the process a little farther. But any new position, it would still come up to board approval.
any comments or questions? Okay, so second reading next month then?
Yep, still need a motion.
Oh, I have a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Marge. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.8 Esports team.
You forgot 8.7.
8.7.
This is one read revision. It's when we had discussion to change the Title IX coordinator from Mr. Meyer to myself, and that's the only change.
Do we have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Austin. Any further discussion? We talked about this also at our work session, correct?
Yes.
Yep. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.8 Esports team.
So this came across my email. It came through Lakes Country Connection. It's going to take a while to put up because there's a lot of color. But esports is basically video game sports. It's become a huge competition across the United States. It's actually become sanctioned by a lot of the sports authorities within the states. So I sent this out to staff to see if there's anybody interested in maybe be an advisor for this group, and we did have interest. So I'm asking the board to approve this as an extracurricular. And again, it's become very competitive.
Scholarships in college.
Everything. It's college, national college level competitions.
Or people watch this in the Super Bowl.
Yep. And what it is though, when you get right down to it, it's offering more for our students to be involved and participate. Also, we're trying to create more opportunities for students that maybe don't fit in athletics or speech or drama. It gives just more opportunities to participate.
And there's a lot of opportunities popping up with gaming, game design, and that type of thing. I know just from John Deere, they created for like Minecraft, a farming simulation. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that are popping up out there.
So they have competitions online. They have like regions they compete then, or
it could be online competitions, could be competing with other players that are online. Typically, they'll have state competitions. In some states, their high school activities associations, it's a sanctioned sport. So they'll have esports competitions in a big group, just like any state competition.
Are any other districts in the area participating in this?
I don't know about our particular area, but in the state, yes. And because this has come up, 10Works is kind of a company helping to get it started. So our one teacher that was interested is going through a webinar to kind of learn more about it. It's Mr. Eklund. He did show interest in this, and he said he does have some background in it.
So this is under the Minnesota State High School League then?
This isn't yet. It's sanctioned by a lot of other states. It's not sanctioned by our high school activities yet, or our league, but I foresee it probably happening in the near future.
Do we know what the cost is?
We haven't gotten any cost yet. My guess is it's probably just membership costs or competition costs like we would have for any other sport, and then possibly, definitely for our advisor. And that's something we can work out, I think, eventually, if we add this as an extracurricular sport.
Is this all online then, or is it like Xbox or?
It's a variety, actually. From what I've seen, my experience working with it, it's a variety of Xbox, PlayStation, some online gaming. Then you can see it talks about the benefits, and a lot of these are related to things that we're looking for in our future. Building career pathways for our students. As Dave said, it's becoming a big industry. The STEM portion of it, Esports Scholarships.
Students have created interest?
We haven't proposed it to students yet, just because we don't know if the board will approve it as an extracurricular. I foresee there being interest in it. I don't think anybody will doubt that we have kids. It's probably one of the biggest outlets. So taking that outlet and putting it into a more focused perspective.
And this won't start until next year?
Probably not until next year. We probably build interest in the spring, maybe do something internally with students in the spring, and then start full board next year.
Do you think we should wait and see if there's interest in this? To make a decision here?
We can, but I just, when it comes to playing video games, I just have a feeling we'll have a lot of interest. And then if,
I think there's going to be a lot of interest, but how, I guess it's like a varsity sport. How do you select who, you might have 100 kids sign up for it because they think gaming is going to be great. And then if we incur the cost of 100 kids, how do we gauge that to make sure
we'd have to have limitations for sure. We'd probably draw up rules for those limitations. But right now, like I said, there's the webinar. Mr. Eklund is attending the webinar to find out a lot more information about it.
Maybe Dave or Mark, I think you guys have been on the longest here. Have there been extracurriculars that have been added in over your time? And how
the trap league, robotics.
And so is there a precedent set of how you've done that in the past? Or?
Well, robotics has done some of their own fundraising, and so has the trap. And the trap has been away from the school. We've kept it under for, it's not a high school league sanctioned sport, but it's really growing, and the interest is growing every year. So I would recommend the same thing here. We've got to offer some, not everyone's a super stud athlete, and got to cater to all of our students. And I know my son would have loved this. He's going to school to be a game designer right now. So I know there's other kids that are interested in it. So But I'm just worried when it comes to this. Every kid loves to play video games, so I'm just worried we're going to get a lot of interest, and then if we incur a lot of cost for each individual, we're going to have to find some way to. I don't want to screen the kids, but to have some way of making sure that if you're going to do this, this is what it's going to entail from you. It's not just come in, play video games, and then leave.
We would treat it like any other sport.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're asking here to look into it more, or
asking to be able to create the extracurricular. Then we'll work on the interest part of it. We'll work on training the advisor and so forth.
And cost.
And cost.
That's my concern is the budget, like the councils, does the school buy them and then, get them back after this?
We'd look at grants and so forth and fundraising. So a team would have to fundraise, and most of our teams fundraise in one way or another. We sell esports t-shirts, so I'll buy one. Get a pretty packed closet.
And it fits in with our school goals too, of STEM.
Yes, well, an innovative school of choice. The more we offer kids in our area, the more we're going to draw in people moving into our community, people open enrollment.
The one thing that catches my eye with this though is a 1.7 or higher GPA to participate. I hope we have a little higher standards than that if they want to participate.
Well, that might be just for them. This company in particular, some groundwork they laid, but.
and I imagine this could be a group team, 3, 4, like Call of Duty or whatever. There's usually they work as a team,
And then there'd be an eligibility criteria for it, just like our other sports and so forth.
Do we know? There's be a lot of interest because I know there's Dungeon. My son Liam led a group with Dungeons and Dragons, and they play video games together already. So this is a good thing.
Do we know what esports they're doing? Like, is it certain games or is it every
variety? There's a huge variety. Call of Duty is one of them.
So do you need a motion? It sounds like we're wanting more information, but we're open to the idea.
I put it on there as a motion to approve it as an extracurricular. If you want to table it, the board can make that decision too.
How about we table it until December, and if Mr. Eklund can come in and tell us what he's found out from his initial.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not against it, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. If he's taking the reins there, just have him come in and brief us on what he's found out.
Okay, that sounds good.
Are we all in agreement on that?
Yeah, I think more information.
Okay.
I like the idea. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about it.
I think we're all thinking the same thing. So table it and for more information and hopefully to speak to Mr. Eklund.
Yes.
Okay, 8.9 purchase risers.
So this was brought to my attention by Shauna. We have currently 110 students that are in choir. During the Veterans Day ceremony, they performed and there was not enough room. So we've been asked to purchase a couple more sets of risers because the total cost I decided to bring this before the board for approval.
So move.
Motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Austin. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.10, give superintendent authority to revise the director of facilities and director of transportation roles.
So as you know, we have a vacancy in a director position, that combined position with transportation and facilities. I'd like the authority to be more creative in that. First of all, to split that position. Number one, that was part of the reason why we have a vacancy. It's because of the task involved in that. My suggestions, and I've been working with principals, is custodians will fall under principals with the lead custodian in each building who will supervise those custodians and answer directly to principals. Any building needs that might include repairs or so forth will come to me for approval. And then if we have exorbitant costs, of course, that'll come to the board. Then for Director of Transportation, looking at one of our current bus drivers, I'm meeting with them tomorrow and work with them to select a bus driver to fulfill the duties of Director of Transportation at a reduced cost, so there'll be a stipend involved. We'll have a pay structure for principals that's taken on this extra supervisory duties, a pay structure for our lead custodians, and then a pay structure for that Director of Transportation. Overall, the cost will be less than we were paying currently.
And are the principals able to assume that responsibility on top of everything else?
Yes, sir.
That lead that's been gone through the union.
Well, will be fulfilled as director positions, so they're non-union positions. So these will be not non-union positions. Basically, it's the supervisory structure that's changed.
Any other questions? Do we have any motions?
So moved.
To give authority to the superintendent? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Marge. Any further discussion?
Is this temporary or is this gonna like?
This will be the way we move forward. The nice thing about it is we'll have people that will be able to just focus on those areas rather than being spread across both transportation and facilities. So they'll be able to dedicate more time to that specific area.
Do you know if you have someone within the transportation group that's interested in that director position?
I think so. I'll chat with them tomorrow to get a better understanding of that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.11 State Bank Authority change requests.
So Sean and I went to the bank to change signatories. So her and I would be on the account. And when we did, we found out there are quite a few people on there that are no longer here. So as you can see on there, we want to remove certain individuals that are no longer part of it and then add. And that needs some board approval.
So on one account, it would be to remove Dr. Paula Henry, Sky Bierke, and Daryl Peterson, and add Dr. Timothy Godfrey, myself, and David O'Connell and Lisa Ertman. And then on the second account, it would be to remove Dr. Paula Henry and Don Anderson and add Dr. Timothy Godfrey and Shauna Ricksbach. Need a motion? Motion by Marge. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Austin. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.12 snow removal bid.
So this is put out for bid, and this is Westland Excavating who's done the snow removal course in the past. He actually came by and did the elementary parking lot during the last time we had our snowfall. He was told that he had the bid already. That was brought to my attention when he said he had the bid already. And I said, no, this needs to be put before the board for a vote because it's a contract. But as you can see, I mean, it's not exorbitant. I will say this, when we looked at the two parking lots after the snow, we did the elementary parking lot, didn't do the high school parking lot. There was a drastic difference. I had to bring a sand truck out here. I asked them to come out and get a sand truck out here because it was a sheet of ice. When we finally got snow removed, I'm really worried about staff safety, student safety, and parent safety. So hit the elementary parking lot, but there was no ice. So.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So
Motion by Mark.
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion?
there were,
So are they, oh, go ahead.
was there 3 requests for bids?
This is the only request we got in.
Okay, but they were sent 3 out to get bid.
Yeah, it was posted for bids.
Yeah.
We did what's called a request for proposals, and then This is the only bid we got in.
So just inform me again, is this, for the whole season, or is it like if it never snows, they will not?
Correct. That's why if you look, he's got us per hour. So if it doesn't snow, they don't charge. So this is a per hour charge.
And he doesn't bring all of those things. He just brings what he needs to clear the parking lot.
Correct.
So every time will be different.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 8.13 elementary school water softener quote.
So about 3 weeks ago, I think it was brought to my attention that we had a malfunction with the water softener at the elementary school. They felt that maybe it was just a valve leaking. We had an inspection. We found out that the housing was cracked on it and it needs to be replaced. So we got 2 bids on that. And then actually Marv, who is our water expert, gave his opinion. I can't remember which one he said. Al's, okay. You can see the cost of that is $10,404. So we look at the other one, the best option for school softener, which is quite a bit more.
Yeah, so 22.
So again, this will be covered through a long-term facilities maintenance fund, which is more than
Used in the new building?
What's that?
Yeah, it's one in the new boiler, in the boiler space that won't get touched, so it'll be
So
used. in the
it'll
new
carry
building
through.
too.
I talked to Marv too, and I briefly, the one has a meter on it, so it's only using salt on the water it uses. I imagine the one now is not metered. Maybe there's a cost savings.
Yeah, I don't, I'd have to look. It's really old. The one that was there was, even to get some parts for it was hard. So if new ones have meters, I'd say it didn't have it.
So even though it's, a few $1,000s more, it may be cost savings to spend a little more now for the metered one. So
Between the two?
yeah, well, not at Aquarius, but at Al's.
Yeah, I got you.
Greg, didn't we just replace?
We looked at the hot water heater, or this is the softener. The hot water heaters we looked at.
Did we replace that?
I don't remember where we went with that because
I
it was
think
set
we
up. I think we did, but a smaller version. There's the 2 huge tanks back when it had shop and showers and that. So I think we took care of the hot water heaters. Now it's the softener that we need.
We did replace the hot water heaters in this building as well in January,
That's right, yeah.
which we're now having problems with.
I hope under warranty.
Yes, we're working with the company now.
So what's $10,000 difference? Isn't that what it was, like from 10 to 20?
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. Right now, basically, they're,
I think Marvin explained it as the one's a Kinetico at, I forget what brand.
I think you're paying for a warranty.
The Aquarius is the Kinetico, and then the other Al's is kind of your common run-of-the-mill water stuff.
Generic.
Yeah.
On the 20, neither one of these include the installation.
I see there it says estimate does not include plumbing or softener.
And Marvin also said it wouldn't take much for plumbing because what it's there, it'd just be pop off and
just exchange.
Yeah. So,
Craig can probably handle that.
yeah.
You got kids, right? Get the kids to do it. It's a good PBL project.
Mm-hmm.
Torch and solder, right?
Oh yeah, there's a couple 6th grade farm boys that.
How more local then, or is that Al's local?
Yeah, that's Big Floyd. So, and the other one is not local.
And I guess that's what he does. He goes around to the large industrial places, delivers salt. So
Do we have a motion in any capacity?
So moved.
You don't get off that easy. What are you so
I'd make a
moving?
motion for the 9500S XT metered twin demand bell. from
That's why I
Al's.
didn't say
From
that.
Al's, okay. Would you like to second, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
Any further discussion?
This L's reputable, I mean, obviously it's recommended by
We've called
Marv.
them I know our other stuff, he's been our go-to at the elementary, probably because Marv's recommendation over.
I like keeping it local too.
You need to add the dollar amount. Suzie? Do
Yeah, I think we do too.
you want to amend your motion, Mark?
For $10,444.04.
Your second
And
still.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Estimate 212. That's for the $10,000 one, if you want to just.
And that'll come from facility, long-term facility maintenance. Bless you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So now we will move into a closed session, 9.1 closed session for the purpose of labor negotiation strategy pursuant to Minnesota statutes 13D.03.
This time I'm going to go ahead and close our.
Do you have a recorder? If you record closed session.